welcome to the 17th Annual Watershed Symposium. And it's my distinct pleasure to invite Mayor Jenny Wilson to open the 17th Annual Symposium. Mayor Wilson has been a longtime supporter of watershed-related issues. I first met her back in 2009 on the Blueprint Jordan River Commission. She has championed many other causes in her tenure at Salt Lake County, including being the first woman elected to the council back in 2005. Now the council consists of 5 women and 4 men. She led the county through generation-defining events like the COVID pandemic and an earthquake days later, all while trying to maintain governance amidst the transition to remote working. Currently, Mayor Wilson is committed to ensuring residents are safe and healthy, that the growth in Salt Lake County is inclusive, that our government is efficient and modern. Her work supports economic development, public health, affordable housing, a clean environment, social services, spaces for arts and recreation, and so much more. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Jenny Wilson.
Well, thanks. What a great turnout. Nice job, team. I'm super happy to be here this morning. We all know that water matters. We all know the dialogue's changed in this community with a lot more awareness. So I think the convening and the engagement that you all will have today and that you all are embracing in your traditional work lives is so much more meaningful right now. Having worked in politics for a long time, as Bob pointed out, there are these sweet spots for issues. And when the public's engaged, that really is a time to push a little harder and to do what you can, take advantage of the window. As you all know, we had a great snow winter last year. Talking to a couple staff members coming in, we're preparing for this year, public works teams and others, and none of us know what's ahead, but with the challenges to the Great Salt Lake and with our need in the community, just generally, even if we weren't facing a shrinking Great Salt Lake, just living in a very arid climate, we have to do our part and be prepared regardless of what's to come in future years. So this year's theme, The Future of Water, How Innovations Will Advance Water Sustainability and Resilience, is so important. And I think about even the international work being done in this space, Africa, other very arid nations, and advancing technology and how we take our water for granted here, and the need to innovate and improve systems, water safety, water availability, how we harvest and assure that we are not wasting. And with that, again, comes public education. That's so important, too. So obviously, the work that you're doing is interesting, not just from a local perspective, but an international as well. And we all know water, it's very precious to us. Our habitat, recreation, economic benefits, the enjoyment we have in recreating. And it's pretty basic. Without water, we just don't even, there's no life. So I want to thank you, the stewards in the audience, the advocates, the policymakers, interested citizens. Thank you for being here today. I'm very grateful to Salt Lake County's Watershed Planning and Restoration Program for the work that you are doing for our residents in Salt Lake County. And today's efforts and discussions are really about not just the great information that's being passed on, but the one-off conversations that you will all have one to the other. I hope you seek out the person that can help whatever element of this journey you're advancing, that person will help your journey along and make some new friends and new contacts, new community contacts. So our focus this year is on the various aspects of watershed management, including addressing threats to water quality and water resources, including climate change, and as I mentioned, the shrinking Great Salt Lake, protecting the headwaters of streams and rivers, securing environmental justice, and fostering community involvement. Additionally, preserving and restoring precious wetlands and our water bodies, and planning for sustainable growth. And, I always say growth can be our friend or our enemy. Let's make sure we are active in assuring that the growth that continues to come in this state is our friend, and that means protecting our vital resources, including water. So I think you'll notice that these topics over the next couple of days will be woven into your various presentations and discussions. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you to the organizers, the volunteers, and all who helped this symposium get off the ground. I'd now like to introduce a friend, Laura Hanson, and I'm thrilled that she could be here today. I first met Laura when I was helping to establish the Jordan River Commission, and Laura came in the room and presented as an applicant for the foundational executive director of the Jordan River Commission, and we were blown away, and the success of the Jordan River Commission today is largely due to the very deliberate efforts that Laura put into place, the action she took to establish what is really an incredible success and so important to our community. And Soren Simonson today continues that legacy, and I'm proud of their accomplishments. I want to just touch on Laura's expertise. She has expertise in urban, environmental, and transportation planning, as well as water policy and administration. And she's currently serving as our state's planning coordinator with the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, and previously served as the planning director for Utah Transit Authority. So with that, my friend Laura Hanson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all. I am so appreciative of Mayor Wilson's kind words, and I am proud to be back here. This is such a fun event and one that I've always enjoyed participating in. I feel so fortunate to have this position at the state. It's a fun one where I get to work on a whole bunch of different policy issues, from water, but also land use and housing and a whole variety of other topics. And one of the projects that I have been working on over the last year has been a statewide conversation about growth. And I wanted to share with you today a little bit of information about that project and some of the things that we have been working on. But first, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing in the water space at the state. I love this quote from the governor. "On my watch, we are not allowing the lake to go dry. We will do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen." The governor's office and the executive branch and the legislative branch have been working really, really hard on water issues over the last few years. We have put more than $1 billion towards water-related funding investments. We've put $67 million of that directly towards improving the Great Salt Lake. The governor appointed a new Great Salt Lake commissioner, and now we have a deputy commissioner as well that you'll hear from later. And we're really committed to keeping this momentum going. We are about to announce the governor's budget, and you may see some things in there that advance some of these goals. Over the last couple of years, all of the various different state agencies that have something to do with water got together and said, what are the things that we really want to commit to working on together? And we came up with these 4 kind of commitment statements. The first is all about maintaining and improving our existing water infrastructure. We have a lot of aging infrastructure, and our population is growing, and so we're needing to invest more in that piece of things. We really want to focus on water conservation within our communities. There, you'll see a big focus on that, and I think you'll hear from some of our agencies on that later today. We're working hard on optimizing water, agricultural water use, to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible. And we're working on the health of our waters and watersheds, including the Great Salt Lake, but also the Colorado River and others. We have approved, the legislature made 25 individual water appropriations in 2023 alone. That is a ton of money. You can see all the numbers here. I started to add it up, but there's some ongoing funds, and so it just got complicated, so I just listed them all. But you can see the state's putting pretty significant dollars towards this. In addition, there were about 30 different pieces of unique water legislation passed just last year alone. And the year prior to that, there was significant investments as well. So we're doing everything that we can. I think our water situation in our state is one where everybody needs to be, like, it's an all hands on deck situation. And I just want to emphasize how important that is to all of us at the state. Now, shifting a little bit back to our growth conversation, there's a lot of wonderful things to celebrate about Utah. And unfortunately, or fortunately, what makes Utah great is also what makes us grow. We are projected to reach 5.4 million people by 2060. That's an additional 2.1, I think, maybe 2.4 million people. That's a lot of additional people that we're adding to our state over the next few years. I happen to be a fifth-generation Utahn. I hope that my kids stay here as well. You know, we stay in Utah. This is home for many of us, but other people are recognizing how wonderful our state is, and they're joining us from other parts of the country as well. We were actually the fastest growing state in the nation over the last decade. So we have a situation here where we're like, oh my gosh, where is all this growth coming from? Is it the Californians? Well, we have some data to help us answer that question. This chart is from the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute. The red line is natural increase. That is births minus deaths. So this is our own kind of internal growth. The shaded area is net migration. So people moving in minus people moving out. You can see that historically, our own net increase has been the dominant force of our growth. We had a little funny blip right around the pandemic where we all of a sudden had all these people moving in because they could work from their vacation home or, you know, from their laptop wherever they wanted, and so we had a little blip in migration. But you'll see the red line picks back up again, and all the way through about 2040, natural increase will continue to be the dominant force behind our state's growth. However, something happens at about 2040 where our fertility rate continues to drop, and we see more and more people moving in. So yes, the Californians are coming. They're our favorite people to beat up on, but I think we're going to have to get used to it, I'm afraid. So unfortunately, it is not a matter of if Utah is going to grow, it's how we will continue to grow. And recognizing that a lot of Utahns are feeling sort of anxious about this growth, we thought it would be a great time to check in with Utahns and say, how are you feeling? What's in your hearts? What's in your minds? What do you love about your community that you hope never changes? What worries you about this growth that we need to plan for and mitigate? And so we launched a project that we called Guiding Our Growth, a statewide conversation about Utah's future. And we have a whole bunch of different partners that have engaged with us on this project. These are the core kind of partners, but there's another tier down where we worked with many, many different state agencies, other community partners and stakeholders to help kind of craft this program or this project. So we launched a survey on May 11th, and we asked people, how do you want your communities to grow? That survey was launched May 11th. It closed August 31st, and I have the data here to share with you. And I really wanted to be able to do a Slido survey with you, but we're going to slip past that. But it'll keep me on time, so it's okay. Just some quick statistics. We had 28,000 people participate in the survey. 19,000 of those were really extensive feedback. Just a quick raise of hands. Did you happen to hear about this? Did anyone here take the survey? A few hands, not as many as I hoped, but that's okay. Thank you all for doing it. Those of you who did know that it was kind of a challenging survey. We really asked people to sort of wrestle with trade-offs and do you like this value or this value? And sometimes prioritizing one requires a trade-off in another area. Also, while we are projected to grow really dramatically as a state, those growth projections are not evenly distributed. You can see the bulk of the growth is happening in Utah County, Salt Lake County, Washington County, but there are parts of the state that are not projected to grow that fast. And so in response to that, we put together three actually different versions of the survey, one for rural areas, one for urban, one for rural areas that are growing, and one that for areas that are not really experiencing very much growth. And you can see how we allocated this based on zip code. The survey was organized around 4 key topics: housing, water, transportation, and open space. And then there were 2 pieces within that. The first is growth options. So really, we could grow this way or this way. There are more kind of ways we can organize that growth. The second piece of the survey was about big ideas, so policy solutions or strategic investments. And what we heard is that while Utahns are feeling the pressures of growth, most Utahns don't feel like we should try to stop it. I mentioned that I hope my kids get to have a home here. That's looking kind of bleak at the moment. But I think we realize that, growth brings jobs, it brings diversity, it brings a variety of wonderful things to our communities. But how we grow matters, right? We get to be in the driver's seat here. We don't have to sit by and just let it come. So a couple of key statistics. On the housing area, I'm going to just blow through these 3 really fast, and then we're going to focus on water because this is the Watershed Symposium. In terms of housing, 58 to 60%, granted, remember we had 3 different versions of the survey, people wanted to allow more small lots, more townhomes, duplexes, and ADUs. 63% of people disagreed with the idea of sprawling out with large lots. In transportation, overwhelming support for development that focused on town centers, transit stations, historic downtowns, and focusing on walking, biking, and public transportation. There was a surprisingly little bit of feedback on we need more highways and roads, really the focus on diversifying our transportation options. And then in open space, only 6% preferred a growth strategy that focused on large lot. Many more people preferred an option that focused on infill, master planned communities, and then investing in urban trails like the Jordan River Parkway, but also natural trails and open space as well. So now getting to water, Utahns really want to see very proactive water conservation efforts. This was the section of the survey where we saw the most consensus, like far and above all of the other areas. People really coalesced around this topic. We presented in the urban survey 4 different options. Option 1 was large lots in new development areas, but with water-wise landscaping. You'll see these are sort of additive. Option 2 was, instead of large lots, let's do small lots, but let's also make sure that they have water-wise landscaping. Option 3 was essentially option 2, but we added in retrofit of existing landscaping. And then option 4 is in response to some feedback that we heard from folks that there's a lot of people that are like, put the brakes on, we're done, we've had enough growth. So we presented a stop the growth option. In the rural areas, we asked, do you want to focus mostly on agricultural optimization? Do you want to focus mostly in our cities and businesses with water-wise landscaping? Do you want to do both? Or do you want to try to stop growth? And the way that these questions were presented is we'd present an option, we had a little description about it, and then we said, here are some upsides. Here are some, let's see. I had some animation on this, and I don't think it's going to play. We had people wrestle with, here are the pros and cons, right? You can do this, but here are some things to consider. And then we asked them to rate their level of support for each one of these options. And then at the end, we said, well, which one's your favorite? Of all 4 of these options, which one do you like the most? And then we had a space for open-ended comments as well. So in urban areas, 61% of respondents said they wanted small lots, water-wise landscaping, and retrofit of existing landscapes. I really like this sense of shared responsibility. Sometimes when we're hearing like, there was plenty of water when I built my house, those new people should take care of it. I found this really comforting that Utahns recognize that we all have a responsibility here. About across the board on all of these topics, about 20% of people said try to stop the growth. In the rural areas, it was a little bit more split, but still the option where it said everybody has a role received 45%. So I found, kind of the key takeaway is this sense of shared responsibility. We're all in this together. We had a space for open comments, and we received 30,000 individual comments throughout the survey. It ended up being the equivalent of about 14 novels worth of words, a ton of information. And I just highlighted a couple of comments here. Urban Utah, we've given up our privilege to waste water. We need to do more. I'm in between option 3 and 4. 4 was that stop growth. I kind of like the idea of restricting housing, but I fear that it will harm low-income people the most. In rural Utah, I think it's ridiculous to only conserve water with new developments. That's not a strong tactic at all. And then, as you would imagine, water for food production really needs to be reprioritized. So open comments there. Now, the second part of the survey talked about those big ideas. These were policy solutions or strategic investments, and people had the ability to select as many of these as they wanted. And here's what we heard there. In urban Utah, 80% of the respondents liked the idea of providing rebates and incentives. I actually just received a rebate for xeriscaping my yard, and I was very appreciative of that. 73% said implement natural stormwater drainage systems in all new developments to improve water quality. I thought this was great. I will note that we had a ton of options that we whittled out of this list because they were a little bit too technical for a general public audience. We asked about aquifer storage recharge and water banking initially, and then we're like, no, the general public's not going to understand those topics, and so we kind of backed it off a little bit. So you'll see some of the ideas here are a little bit less innovative. Requiring low water land use landscaping. We are typically a state where we don't like a lot of government intervention and people telling us what to do, but Utahns are supportive of requirements for water-wise landscaping. Municipal scale water recycling and reuse systems, obviously that is geographically specific, and in some places it works, in some places it doesn't. In rural Utah, again, support for rebates, supports for investing in water infrastructure, increasing investments in ag optimization, recycling, and even in rural Utah, support for low water landscaping. So I was going to ask you some ideas through SLCo about what big ideas or innovations you would like to see policymakers explore on water. What I'm going to do instead of the SLCo is maybe Lynn and Bob can send out a Google form afterwards to all of the participants, and you can submit your ideas to me that way. Because really what we're doing with this information is taking it back to state policymakers, to local policymakers, and saying, what do you guys want to do? Here are some great ideas. And then other ideas here on what do we need to help implement the public's priorities and the public's preferences. Is it funding? Is it data and research? Is it case studies? Is it toolboxes and best practices? All of those various different types of things. So what we're doing next is sharing these survey results really widely, getting them out and in front of as many people as possible. We've been facilitating a series of workshops all around the state, and we are working our way through those. I think we've done probably 20 of those in various different parts of the state. We really want local governments to take a look at their plans and say, gosh, does this match what the public says that they want? Oftentimes, community leaders are in city council meetings and an angry mob shows up, and that vocal minority with the pitchforks sometimes rules the day, but this data provides a much, much broader spectrum of public input, and so we're asking leaders to take a look at that. And then a call to action. In advance of the legislative session, we plan to pull all of these recommendations and ideas together and say, here's what Utahns want. The ball's in your court. How are you going to get us there? And then lastly, we want to make sure that we have performance metrics so that this is not just an exercise where we say, hey, good job, put it on the shelf, but we can actually track, are we making progress? Are we moving towards the kind of future that Utahns have said that they want for themselves? So I'm going to pass it back to Lynn and Bob at this point. Thank you so much.